A life-changing realization. Stop waiting for the world's applause. Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a crowded room. Heart heavy, thoughts racing, waiting for someone, anyone, to notice the weight you're carrying. You're hoping for a glance, a word, a gesture that says, "I see you, I understand," but the room keeps buzzing. Oblivious. The chatter goes on, the laughter echoes, and the world spins without pausing for you. That moment, that piercing, quiet moment when you realize no one is coming to save you, it's not loud or dramatic. There's no spotlight, no crescendo, no applause, just silence, the kind of silence that seeps into your bones. Heavy and unshakable. Have you ever felt that? That ache when you understand the world isn't going to fix your pain? It's raw, it's real, and it's where something extraordinary begins. Welcome to a journey that's not about chasing validation or begging for understanding. This is about discovering a strength so deep, so ancient, it doesn't need the world's approval. If you're ready to stop performing for an indifferent audience and start building a life that commands respect through discipline and clarity, then this is for you. Hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for you. It's a quiet vow to yourself. A promise to step into a life rooted in self-respect and unshakable purpose. Because here, we don't chase the world's fleeting applause. We build something it can't ignore. The illusion we all carry. Most of us grow up with a secret hope tucked deep inside. Don't we? A soft, unspoken belief that if we hurt enough, if we struggle just right, someone will notice. We're taught this from childhood, movies, stories, even the way we're raised. If you're in pain, the world will care. If you cry, someone will dry your tears. If you fall, a hand will lift you up. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? The thought that our suffering is visible, that it matters to someone beyond ourselves. But then life happens. The phone stays silent, the tears go unnoticed. The pain you thought would scream loud enough to stop the world? It barely makes a ripple. Picture this. You're sitting alone at night, staring at your phone, waiting for a message that never comes. Or maybe you're in a room full of friends, laughing on the outside, but inside you're screaming, "Does anyone see me?" And the answer, more often than not, is no. Not because people are cruel, not because they don't care, but because they're drowning in their own chaos. Everyone's fighting a battle you can't see, just like they can't fully see yours. It's not malice, it's just life. And that realization? It's a gut punch. But here's the thing. That pain, that quiet ache of being overlooked, isn't a dead end, it's a doorway. When you're young, you believe pain deserves a spotlight. You think suffering should come with a reward, a pat on the back, a kind word, a moment of recognition. You tell yourself, if I just hurt enough, someone will step in. If I word it perfectly, they'll understand. But life doesn't hand out medals for endurance. It doesn't send angels to cradle you when you're on your knees. The world keeps moving, friends forget, strangers scroll, and the days march on. That might sound harsh, but harsh doesn't mean untrue. And here's the beautiful twist. That truth, as painful as it is the first step towards something greater. It's the moment you stop waiting for the world to save you and start saving yourself. The Stoic secret. Power in letting go. The Stoics, those ancient philosophers who wrestled with life's toughest questions, understood this centuries ago. They knew something we often forget. True power begins when expectations die. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, sitting alone in his tent, scribbling by candlelight, reminding himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wasn't chasing applause or validation. He wasn't waiting for the world to understand his struggles. He was building an inner fortress, one that no external chaos could shake. What does that mean for you? It means the moment you stop expecting the world to respond to your pain. You stop freezing your life in place. You stop waiting for someone to read the unspoken lines of your silence. You stop hoping your quiet breakdown will be noticed and magically mended by someone who gets it. Instead, you start moving. You start acting for reasons that have nothing to do with being seen. You begin to live for something real, something unshakable, yourself. Have you ever thought about what it would feel like to let go of that need for validation? To stop performing for an audience that's too busy to notice? It's not easy. There's a sorrow that comes with realizing you're not the main character in anyone else's story. It's like standing on a stage, lights dimming, curtains closing, and realizing the seats are empty. But that's not rejection, it's gravity. No one owes you understanding. No one is required to hold your hand through the fog. And while that might make the world feel colder, it also sets your inner world ablaze. Because now, you're the one lighting the fire. The clarity that changes everything. Let's talk about that fire. That moment when disappointment stops stinging and starts teaching. When you realize the world's indifference isn't a curse, it's a gift. It's clarity. And clarity, my friend, is the first real taste of freedom. Think about it. How much of your life have you spent waiting? Waiting for someone to notice your struggle, to validate your worth, to tell you you're enough? What if you stopped? What if you decided, right now, that you are enough, not because someone says so, but because you've chosen to believe it? This is where the Stoics found their strength, not in being untouched by pain, but in refusing to outsource their healing. They didn't wait for the world to fix them. They didn't beg for understanding. They built their own peace. Brick by brick, thought by thought. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's not just philosophy, it's a battle cry. It's a reminder that you hold the reins to your inner world. No matter how chaotic the outer one gets, picture yourself standing at a crossroads. One path leads to a life spent chasing validation, hoping someone will see your pain and make it right. The other path? It's quieter, less crowded. It's the path where you stop performing and start becoming. It's where you build a life rooted in discipline, clarity, and self-respect. Which path feels truer to you? Which one feels like freedom? The world's gaze versus your truth. Here's something Carl Jung said that hits hard. The world will ask you who you are. And if you don't know, the world will tell you. But let's be real, most people aren't asking because they care. They're asking so they can fit you into a box that makes sense to them. They don't see you, they see their idea of you. And when you spend your life performing for that gaze, you're not living, you're acting. You're shaping yourself to fit their script, their expectations, their applause. But what happens when you step off that stage? When you stop trying to be the hero in someone else's story and start writing your own? It's scary, sure. It's lonely at first, but it's also where you find something real. Something that doesn't bend or break under the weight of the world's indifference. You start living for you, not for their approval, not for their understanding, but for the quiet, unshakable strength that grows when you stop needing to be seen. Imagine waking up one day and realizing you don't need the world's permission to be whole. You don't need their applause to feel worthy. You don't need their validation to move forward. That's not just freedom, it's power. The kind of power that doesn't shout or demand attention. It's the kind that builds quietly, steadily, until the world can't help but take notice, not because you asked for it, but because you've become something undeniable. So, here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting. Stop freezing your life in hopes that someone will notice you're stuck. Stop expecting the world to read between the lines of your silence. You get it now. You see the truth. And that changes everything. This isn't about becoming cold or cutting yourself off from the world. It's about redirecting your energy toward yourself, toward your growth, toward the life you want to build. If you're ready to take that step, to cultivate a strength that doesn't beg or explain, then let's do this together. Subscribe as a quiet promise to yourself, a commitment to a life rooted in discipline, clarity, and self-respect. Because here, we're not chasing the world's fleeting applause. We're building something it can't ignore. A life that stands tall, not because it's loud, but because it's real. Let's be honest. The world might never fully see you. And that's okay, because when you stop needing it to, you start seeing yourself. And that's where the real story begins. So, what are you waiting for? Take that first step. Stop performing. Start becoming. And let's build something extraordinary together. Stop waiting to be seen. Build your own strength. We've just uncovered a truth that changes everything. The world's indifference isn't a curse, it's a call to build your own fire. A fire that burns bright, not for applause, but for you. Now, let's take that clarity and dive deeper. What happens when you stop waiting for others to see your pain? To name your worth? You start seeing yourself. And that, my friend, is where the real transformation begins. Letting go of the spotlight. Imagine you're standing on a stage, pouring your heart out, waiting for the crowd to lean in, to nod, to care. But the seats are empty. The lights are dim, and the only sound is your own voice echoing back. For so long, you've been hoping someone else would see your wounds, validate your struggles, and say, "You're enough." But the more you focus on being seen, the less you see yourself. You become a flicker in someone else's story, background noise instead of the main signal in your own life. Have you ever felt like you're shouting into a void, waiting for someone to echo back? It's exhausting, isn't it? But here's the turning point. When you let go of that hope, that desperate need for others to witness your pain and give it meaning, something incredible happens. You don't become harder or colder. You become clearer. You start noticing how much of your identity was tied to being seen, to the belief that someone, somewhere, should care. And when they don't, you used to take it personally, didn't you? Like their silence meant you were unworthy. But here's a truth no one likes to admit. Just because people don't care doesn't mean you're less. It just means they're human, flawed, distracted, caught up in their own storms. Just like you. The game was never about being seen. It was about waking up to the fact that you are the one who's been watching all along. You're the one living inside your mind, carrying the full weight of your thoughts, your dreams, your pain. That's not a burden, it's a gift. Why? Because it means you have the power to rewrite your story. Not them, you. The power of being unseen. There's a quiet strength in being unseen. A clarity that comes when you stop needing an audience. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's what happens when you stop chasing validation. You don't just talk about strength, you become it. Not for attention, not for recognition, but because something inside you refuses to stay small. Picture it. A spark deep within you. Flickering at first, but growing stronger with every moment you choose yourself over the world's applause. That spark doesn't need a spotlight to shine. The pain that once felt like a weight dragging you down, it becomes your blueprint. The silence that used to haunt you, whispering doubts in the dark, it becomes your teacher, guiding you to truths you'd never hear in the noise of the crowd. And that solitude you once feared, the kind that made you feel invisible, it becomes your home, a place where you rebuild, not for others, but for you. When that shift happens, you carry your wounds differently. They're no longer a burden to broadcast, they're proof you kept going. Proof you survived. Maybe being overlooked wasn't the tragedy you thought it was. Maybe it was the beginning, the slow, quiet death of an illusion that kept you small. What if the real tragedy was waiting for someone else to define your worth? When you let go of that, you start building something solid, something permanent, something that doesn't need validation because it's too busy standing tall, listening to the voice within. Here's where it gets real. When no one else is listening, something unexpected happens. You start listening to yourself. Not the loud, surface voice that echoes what others expect, the one that says, "Be this, do that, fit in." No, it's the quieter voice underneath. The one you've ignored because it wasn't loud enough to compete with the world's noise. But in the absence of applause, that voice grows roots. It becomes clear, steady, like a compass pointing you toward your truth. At first, it's strange, uncomfortable, even. You're so used to checking your reflection in other people's eyes, how they see you, what they think of you. But when those eyes turn away, you learn to see yourself from the inside. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not to fix your appearance, but to meet your own gaze, to really see who you are, without decoration, without pretense. That's when you start moving differently, not because someone told you to, not because they believed in you, but because you decided to show up. No witnesses, no cheerleaders, no one holding the door open. The slow dawn of self-reliance. Self-reliance doesn't burst onto the scene like a superhero landing. It arrives quietly, often disguised as loneliness. Picture this. You wake up one morning, and no one's checking in. No one's asking, "How are you holding up?" The phone stays silent, the inbox empty, and instead of falling apart, something shifts. You start building. You take yourself seriously, not because others do, but because you're tired of waiting, tired of pausing your growth, hoping someone will hand you permission to keep going. How many times have you held back, waiting for a sign, a nod, a word, a signal that it's the right time, the right move, the right direction? But what if that permission never comes? What if the only person who needs to say, "You've got this," is you? That's the moment you stop being noise in someone else's life and become the signal in your own. You start crafting a life that doesn't need an audience to feel real. A life that's yours, raw, unfiltered, and unbreakable. So, here's the call. Stop waiting for the world to see you. Stop hoping someone else will name your worth. You're the one who's been watching all along. You're the one who gets to decide what comes next. Subscribe if you're ready to take that step, not for me, but for the version of you that's ready to stop performing and start becoming. Because the life you're building? It's not just something the world can't ignore. It's something you can't ignore. And that's where your real story begins. Choosing yourself. The path to true freedom. We've just uncovered the power of listening to your own voice. Of building a life that doesn't need the world's applause to stand tall. Now, let's take that strength and ask, what happens when you stop waiting for permission to be who you're meant to be? That's where the real journey begins, not in being chosen, but in choosing yourself, claiming your own authority. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a decision, heart pounding, waiting for someone to say, "You're ready, go for it." But what if that moment never comes? Would you stay frozen, trapped in a cycle of waiting forever? Or would you finally step forward and claim the authority that's been yours all along? That's where real power sparks to life, not in someone else picking you, but in you picking yourself. The world has taught us to chase validation like it's the air we breathe. To believe that our worth depends on someone else's nod of approval. But the Stoics, those ancient masters of inner strength, knew better. They understood that peace isn't found in popularity or praise. It's found in discipline, in showing up for yourself even when no one else does. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, put it perfectly. No person is free who is not master of themselves. Freedom doesn't come from a cheering crowd or a supportive hand. It comes from knowing that even when the room is empty, you'll keep going, not out of spite or bitterness, but because the work matters. Because you matter. Imagine that shift. Showing up stops being a performance for others and becomes an act of self-respect. It's like planting a flag in the ground, declaring, "This is my life, and I'm here for it." In that quiet commitment, a new relationship forms, not with the world, but with your own mind. Awakening to your inner voice. You start to trust your mind more. You listen to the signals your body sends, the fatigue in your shoulders, the pull in your gut, the fire flickering behind your chest. You stop outsourcing your intuition. Stop letting others' opinions steer your path. Instead of living reactively, bending to every external expectation, you start responding to yourself. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." That awakening isn't a Hollywood moment with swelling music and dramatic breakthroughs. It's quieter, steadier. It's the small, consistent choices that build a foundation under your feet. Think about it. How often do you keep promises to yourself? Going for that walk you said you'd take. Writing those words you've been holding back. Saying no to something that drains your soul. These aren't loud acts. They don't get applause or viral likes. But they stack up, brick by brick, building something no one can see from the outside. Trust in yourself. And that trust? It's the currency of freedom. It's what lets you stand tall when the world turns away. When the silence no longer scares you. When you don't feel the need to broadcast every move or explain every feeling. You know the effort you're making. You know the storms you've walked through. You know what it took to still be here. Choosing growth over collapse. That's not arrogance, it's integrity. The strength of being your own backup plan. There's a quiet strength that grows when you realize you are your own backup plan. Picture it. You're no longer waiting for someone to notice you're trying. To validate your struggle, you stop depending on those moments when you wish someone would say, "I see you." Sure, those moments of doubt still creep in. You're human. After all, you might long for a kind word, a nod of recognition, but now, you don't crumble without it. You carry yourself with a quiet awareness, a certainty that you've earned your own respect. And that's rare. That's what makes people pause when you walk into a room, not because you're shouting for attention, but because your energy whispers, "I don't need it." Seneca, Another Stoic giant, wrote, "The greatest empire is to rule oneself." Ruling yourself doesn't mean perfection. It's not about never faltering or never feeling pain. It's about consistency, about doing what matters even when no one's watching. It's holding your standards high, not for likes or praise, but because that's who you've chosen to be. When you build from that place, you become the structure of your own life. You don't collapse when someone pulls away. You don't unravel when someone misunderstands you. Why? Because your foundation was never built on their approval. It was built on clarity, on quiet decisions made in solitude, on the strength of waking up each day and choosing to move forward. The freedom of letting go. Here's the most liberating part. Once you rely on yourself this way, you stop resenting others for not being what you needed. You release them. You stop waiting for them to notice, to return, to explain. You no longer tie your progress to their presence. You move forward, not with coldness, but with grace. It's like setting down a heavy load you've carried for too long. Feeling your shoulders lift, your steps lighten. You become free, not because the pain is gone, but because it no longer defines your path. You carry it, but it doesn't carry you. What would it feel like to live like that? To move through the world with a quiet confidence, knowing you're enough, not because someone said so, but because you've proven it to yourself. That's the life you're building when you choose yourself. It's not loud or flashy. It's steady, solid, unshakable, and it starts with a single step: deciding that you don't need the world's permission to be great. You just need to see yourself clearly, honestly, without decoration. So, here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting for someone to say you're ready. Stop pausing your life for a validation that might never come. You're the one who's been here all along. Through every storm, every silence, every step. Subscribe if you're ready to claim that power, not for me, but for the version of you that's done waiting. Because the life you're building? It's not just yours. It's undeniable. And it starts now. The power of your silent strength. We've just explored the freedom of choosing yourself, of building a life that stands firm without needing the world's permission. But what happens when you embrace that independence fully? When you decide to keep going, no matter who sees or doesn't see you? That's where you discover a deep, unshakable steadiness, a strength that says, "This life is mine, and I'll live it on my terms." The courage to keep going. Imagine standing alone on a quiet path, the world buzzing around you, indifferent. No one's there to cheer you on. No one's rushing to help. No one's even glancing your way. And yet, you take a step forward, then another. Why? Because this life is yours to live. And you're done waiting for someone to hand you a permission slip to become who you were always meant to be. That's not just courage, it's sovereignty. It's the moment you say, "Even if no one sees me, even if no one comes, I will keep going." Have you ever felt that quiet resolve ignite inside you? It's like a steady flame, burning not for show, but for purpose. We live in a world obsessed with exposure. Every feeling must be shared, every wound displayed, every struggle turned into a post for others to like or comment on. The more visibly broken you are, the more attention you get. But here's the catch: not all attention heals. Some of it is hollow, fleeting, keeping you tethered to your pain just to feel connected. Slowly, without even realizing it, you start performing your suffering. You edit your emotions, packaging them for sympathy, turning raw, real feelings into content. You think it'll bring you closer to others. But does it? Or does it just make your healing someone else's storyline? Consumed today and forgotten tomorrow? The difference between honesty and performance. There's a difference between honesty and emotional performance. One comes from depth, the other from habit. One is quiet, raw, and real. The other is rehearsed, shaped to fit an audience's expectations. Most of us were never taught that difference. We confuse spilling our pain with healing it, thinking that if we talk about a wound, we've worked through it. But sometimes, the more you narrate your hurt, the more it lingers, kept alive by the need to be seen. Not every wound needs a megaphone. Some things are meant to be felt, endured, and integrated in silence. Picture a quiet moment alone, sitting with your thoughts, letting the weight of your emotions settle without rushing to share them. That's not hiding, it's honoring what's sacred. The Stoics understood this. They weren't emotionless robots, they were composed, feeling deeply but refusing to let those feelings steer their lives. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." He didn't mean to bury your emotions. He meant don't let them become a performance. Let them become presence. Let them flow through you without turning into a script for others to follow. When you stop broadcasting every bruise, you protect something precious, your inner world. And that's not weakness, it's power. The beauty of sacred silence. We're conditioned to think silence is a flaw. That if we don't express every feeling, we're hiding something. But what if silence is strength? What if keeping parts of your story private doesn't mean you're ashamed, but that you're guarding something sacred? In a world addicted to access, where every moment is shared and dissected, silence creates mystery. It demands space, and that can feel unsettling to others because it can't be pitied, praised, or picked apart. Carl Jung knew this well. He said, "Solitude is for me a fount of healing which makes my life worth living." The deepest transformations don't happen on a public stage. They happen when you're alone with your thoughts, choosing not to react, not to prove, not to explain. Imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet room. No phone, no notifications, just you and your thoughts. You let your emotions pass through like clouds in a vast sky, without needing them to be liked, validated, or understood. That's not suppression, it's sovereignty. It's easy to mistake the loud for the strong, but real strength is often quiet, still, and completely uninterested in being understood. You don't have to prove your growth in real time. You don't have to narrate your healing for the world to follow along. You can keep it close. Let it unfold in private, and let the results speak later. That patience, that refusal to perform, is what makes you powerful. Why? Because it means your peace isn't up for public negotiation. Becoming unexplainable. There's a kind of beauty in becoming unexplainable, in being someone who doesn't share every emotional bruise just to earn a moment of softness in return. You learn that not everyone deserves access to your struggles, not because you're hiding, but because you've stopped using your pain as a currency for connection. When you stop broadcasting your wounds, something shifts. You stop attracting people who are only there to watch the damage, and you start drawing in those who resonate with your quiet strength. It's like clearing the clutter from a room, leaving only what's real, what's true. This is your invitation to stop performing, to stop waiting for the world to see your pain and call it valid. You don't need their applause to heal, to grow, to become. You've got something stronger, your own steady, inner fire. So, keep going, even when no one's watching. Build a life that's yours, not for likes or comments, but for the truth of who you are. Subscribe if you're ready to embrace that power, to live for yourself, not for the world's gaze. Because the life you're crafting, it's not just unexplainable, it's unstoppable. The quiet rebellion of being you. We've just uncovered the power of embracing silence, of guarding your inner world as something sacred. Not a performance for the world's applause. But what happens when you take that a step further, when you realize your strength doesn't need to be proven to anyone but yourself? That's when you step into a quiet rebellion. A life lived on your terms, unshaken by the need for approval. Proving yourself, to yourself. Imagine standing on a cliff, waves crashing below, the wind howling around you. You've faced storms, carried scars, and walked through fires no one else saw. Do you need to display those scars to prove your strength? Do you need to keep reopening old wounds just to remind others what you've endured? No. The moment you realize you've proven it to yourself, everything changes. That's enough. That's more than enough. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But once you've faced adversity and grown through it, you don't need to wave the evidence like a flag. You know what you've survived. You know the weight you've carried. And that knowing, it's your foundation. You start to guard your inner life like a rare treasure. Because it is. You stop spending your emotions carelessly, as if they're currency to buy attention. Have you ever felt drained from explaining yourself over and over, trying to make someone understand your pain? It's exhausting, isn't it? You pour out your heart, hoping for a nod of understanding, only to realize some people don't have the depth to grasp their own struggles, let alone yours. So, you stop. You stop wasting energy on explanations that don't need to be given. You stop begging to be understood. Instead, you turn inward, and in that quiet space, you find clarity. A clarity that feels like coming home. The art of discernment. The world loves to celebrate vulnerability, but it rarely tells you the full story. Real vulnerability isn't about exposing every wound for likes or sympathy. It's about discernment, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Who gets to see the real you and who only gets the surface? Picture this. You're holding a precious gem. Its facets catching the light in ways only you can fully see. Do you hand it to everyone who passes by? Or do you choose carefully who gets to hold it? Your emotions, your pain, your story, they're that gem. You don't need the world to validate them for them to matter. You don't need to turn your hurt into art just to justify why it stings. You can hold it quietly, heal without an audience, grieve without a stage, and when you do, something incredible happens. You stop fearing the silence. That silence, the one you used to dread, starts to feel like a return to yourself. It's no longer abandonment, it's a homecoming. There's nothing wrong with expressing emotion. But when it becomes a performance, it steals your power. Sovereignty begins the moment you choose presence over performance. The moment you stop explaining yourself to feel safe. Your peace isn't fragile, it's forged in solitude. Tempered by the quiet choices you make when no one's watching. And when others can't predict you by your emotional patterns anymore. They start to respect the depth they can't access, not because you've grown cold, but because you've grown wise. The freedom of keeping it sacred. You don't owe anyone a front row seat to your healing. You don't need to bleed in public to prove you're human. Some truths are meant to be whispered only to yourself, held close like a letter you'll never send. That's not hiding, it's maturity. In a world that glorifies noise, that kind of quiet is its own rebellion, its own freedom. It's like standing in a crowded room, voices clamoring around you, and choosing to stay still, centered, unswayed. You don't need to shout to be heard. Your presence speaks louder than words. Rejection stings because it taps into something primal, the need to belong. To be seen, to be accepted as we are. But what if what feels like rejection is actually redirection? What if you weren't dismissed because you lacked value, but because your depth was too much for shallow eyes? Your silence wasn't absence, it was self-containment. Your quiet wasn't coldness, it was strength. You were misunderstood, not because you failed to express, but because you carry a frequency most people aren't tuned to. That doesn't make you wrong, it makes you rare. Embracing your uniqueness. The world loves what's easy to label, easy to consume, easy to predict. But you're not a neat box. You're not meant to fit into someone else's mold. When you don't, you become inconvenient. And in a world rushing to categorize, inconvenience is often discarded before it's explored. It's tempting to internalize that as a flaw. To think, if I were louder, softer, simpler, maybe I'd be accepted. But that's the trap. The belief that your value lies in being legible to others. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who others can easily understand, not who fits the mold, but who you are when no one's watching. When you've stopped chasing approval." That kind of authenticity comes at a cost. It invites misunderstanding. It requires solitude. But it also brings a freedom most people never taste, the freedom of being unapologetically you. So, stop trying to shrink into their comprehension. Stop waiting for the world to catch up to your frequency. You're building something rare, something real, something that doesn't need validation to stand tall. Subscribe if you're ready to embrace that quiet rebellion. To live for the truth of who you are, not for the world's applause. Because the life you're crafting? It's not just yours, it's extraordinary. The quiet revolution of becoming undeniable. We've just uncovered the beauty of embracing your rarity, of living authentically without shrinking to fit the world's mold. But what happens when you stop chasing acceptance and start building a life aligned with your truth? That's when a quiet revolution begins, a transformation driven not by applause, but by alignment with who you're meant to be. Rejection as clarity. Picture this. You pour your heart into something, a conversation, a project, a dream, only to be met with silence. No applause, no nod of approval, just a quiet void. In the past, that silence might have stung, made you question your worth. But what if rejection isn't a loss? What if it's clarity? Every person who overlooks you, every space that doesn't welcome you, Every silence that follows your presence, it's not a verdict on your value. It's a signpost, pointing you away from where your energy doesn't belong. Have you ever considered that being passed over might be a gift? It saves you from pouring yourself into places that only tolerate you, teaching you to invest where you're truly valued. That insight is priceless. It frees you from years of self-doubt, from chasing explanations for why someone didn't choose you. You stop wondering, why wasn't I enough? And start realizing, not being chosen gave me back to myself. It's like a door closing behind you, gently nudging you toward a path that's yours alone. That's the start of a quiet revolution, a shift from begging to be seen to building something that stands on its own. You redirect all the energy you once spent on proving your worth into creating something real, a body of work, a lifestyle, a discipline rooted in self-respect. You move from emotional scarcity to psychological sovereignty, where your existence is no longer up for debate. Finding your center. When your center of gravity shifts inward, something powerful happens. You stop being swayed by approval or rattled by dismissal. You become grounded, like a tree with deep roots, unmoved by the storms swirling around it. Grounded people are magnetic, not because they demand attention, but because they carry a stability that's rare in a world that spins too fast. People will still misread you. They'll weave stories about your quiet, your ambition, your boundaries, trying to make sense of you through their own lens. Let them. Marcus Aurelius said it best. The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. And you? You are the subject. Most people don't know you, not really. They see fragments, glimpses, and project their assumptions onto you. But that's just noise. Once, that noise might have bothered you. You might have felt the urge to correct every misconception, to explain yourself until you were understood. But now, you let it go. You stop wasting energy on fixing false narratives. Your focus sharpens. You get more done. You sleep deeper. You move with a clarity that comes from living truthfully, not from being perceived correctly. It's like clearing the fog from a window, seeing the world, and yourself, with crisp, unfiltered vision. You don't justify why you've gone quiet, why you walked away, or why you set boundaries. You just live them, not as a defense, but as a natural extension of who you are. The power of living truthfully. There's immense peace in that shift. You stop explaining your process, your priorities, your silence. You become someone who moves with conviction, not commentary. Over time, that creates distance, not between you and others, but between you and the noise that once clouded your mind. Rejection becomes revelation. It doesn't shrink you, it sculpts you. Every closed door clarifies your direction. Every silence refines your voice. Every betrayal deepens your discernment. What once felt like exile now feels like space, space to build, space to breathe, space to become not someone acceptable, but someone undeniable. This shift changes everything. You stop speaking to be heard and start speaking to build. You stop walking into rooms to prove your worth and start walking and already knowing it. You stop asking, am I too much, too quiet, too intense? And start asking, is this space too small for my truth? You stop apologizing for your depth and start protecting it. That's not arrogance, it's arrival. It's the moment you step fully into who you are, unapologetic and unafraid. Your initiation into authenticity. If you've been overlooked, let it be your initiation. If you've been misunderstood, let it be your turning point. You're not here to explain yourself into existence. You're here to be, to build a life that's true, not one that's approved. Picture yourself standing tall, not shouting for attention, but radiating a quiet strength that draws the right people closer, those who see your depth, not just your surface. That's the life you're crafting when you choose to become, not to be seen. So, here's the call. Stop chasing the world's validation. Stop waiting for permission to be undeniable. You've got everything you need to build a life that's yours, rooted in truth, forged in silence, and unshaken by noise. Subscribe if you're ready to join this quiet revolution, to live for your own alignment, not the world's applause. Because the life you're building? It's not just authentic, it's unstoppable. The transformative power of solitude. We've just explored the quiet revolution of living for your own truth, of building a life so undeniable it rewrites the room without needing applause. But what happens when you lean into solitude? When you choose to face yourself without distraction? That's where you uncover a deeper transformation, a clarity that burns away everything that isn't you and reveals the strength that's been there all along. Rejection as a path to clarity. Imagine standing in a quiet space. The world's noise fading into the distance. No voices, no expectations, just you and the echo of your own thoughts. Rejection used to feel like a wound, didn't it? A sign that you weren't enough. But what if it's not the end of your worth? What if it's the beginning of your clarity? Every person who overlooks you, every space that doesn't welcome you, every silence that follows your presence, it's not a judgment. It's a map, showing you where your energy doesn't belong. That realization is like finding a compass in the dark. It saves you from chasing approval in places that only offer tolerance. You stop asking, "Why wasn't I chosen?" and start seeing the gift. Not being chosen gave you back to yourself. This is where the quiet revolution takes root. You stop pouring energy into explaining yourself, into wondering why someone didn't see your value. Instead, you redirect that energy into building something real, something that doesn't need to be explained. Something that stands tall on its own. A body of work, a disciplined lifestyle, a commitment to your own integrity. You shift from emotional scarcity, constantly proving your worth, to psychological sovereignty, where your existence is no longer up for debate. You become grounded, like a mountain unmoved by the winds of approval or dismissal. And grounded people? They're magnetic, not because they chase attention, but because they carry a steadiness that's rare in a world that's always spinning. The mirror of solitude. People talk about loneliness as if it's something to escape, as if the absence of others means the absence of worth. But solitude, when chosen with intention, isn't isolation, it's transformation. Picture yourself in a quiet room. The chatter of the world gone. Only your thoughts filling the space. At first, that silence feels heavy, like an echo that presses against you. But slowly, it sharpens. It becomes a mirror that doesn't lie, reflecting not your weaknesses, but your foundation. In that stillness, you see the truth, the craving for approval, the impulse to please, the subtle performances you didn't even realize you were giving. They start to melt away in the furnace of being alone, leaving behind something harder, something real. For many, that's why solitude is so terrifying. Without an audience to impress, without someone to chase, you're left with the raw material of your mind, your values, your fears, your truth. Have you ever sat with yourself long enough to feel that? It's uncomfortable at first, like meeting a stranger you've known all your life. But that discomfort isn't loss, it's freedom. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgment of them." In solitude, those judgments come into focus. You start to see how many of your thoughts were borrowed, how many of your fears came from someone else's voice, how much of your identity was built on avoiding rejection rather than seeking truth. Awakening to your own voice. That's where the alchemy begins. The discomfort doesn't vanish, but it transforms. What felt like loneliness starts to feel like privacy. What felt like exile becomes clarity. Your own voice, once drowned out by the world's opinions, grows louder, uncensored, unpolished, unafraid. It teaches you how to live. You realize peace isn't found in a full calendar or a crowded room. It's found in presence, in sitting with yourself without flinching, in feeling the weight of your own mind and not running from it. That's not detachment, it's mastery. Carl Jung said, "The man who looks outside dreams. The man who looks inside awakens." Solitude forces you to look inward, to awaken, and with that awakening comes a responsibility. You can no longer blame the noise for your confusion or others for your stagnation. It's just you now, and that's where the power begins. You stop waiting for someone to save you, validate you, or guide you. You start building your own compass, one that points not to attention, but to integrity. Most people avoid solitude because they're afraid of what they'll find when the distractions are gone. But that discomfort? It's the crucible where strength is forged. You don't become strong by avoiding yourself. You become strong by confronting what's unhealed, unclear, and uncertain, without an audience, without applause. Running deeper, not away. Solitude isn't running away, it's running deeper. It's where your resilience forms. Quietly, consistently, without fanfare, you start making decisions differently. Not from a place of fear or need, but from a place of truth. Picture yourself as a sculptor, chiseling away at the excess, revealing the form that was always there. That's what solitude does. It strips away the noise and leaves you with the raw material of who you are. And in that process, you become someone who moves with purpose. Not for approval, but for the life you're building. This is your invitation to embrace that quiet power. To choose solitude not as a punishment, but as a path to clarity. To let the silence sharpen your focus and reveal your strength. Subscribe if you're ready to stop running from yourself and start running deeper, toward a life that's not just lived, but truly yours. Because the person you're becoming? They're not just strong, they're unstoppable. The power of solitude. How silence shapes your strongest self. Hey, you, yes, you, scrolling through, wondering if this video is worth your time. What if I told you that the secret to unlocking your truest, most unshakable self isn't found in the noise of the world, but in the quiet moments you spend alone? Imagine this. A version of you so grounded, so clear, that no trend, no opinion, no chaos can sway you. Sound impossible? Stick with me, because today, we're diving into the transformative power of solitude, how it sharpens your instincts, builds your boundaries, and sets you free to live life on your terms. Let's get into it. Solitude. It's not a punishment, it's a superpower. It's the space where you learn to trust yourself, to hear the voice inside that's been drowned out by the world's demands. When you step away from the chatter, social media, endless notifications, the pressure to be on all the time, you start to notice something. Your instincts? They're sharper than you thought. You've spent so long listening to everyone else, friends, family, even strangers online, that you forgot how to listen to you. But in the quiet, you start to hear it. That inner compass. That gut feeling. And here's the thing. It's not just noise you're tuning out. You're learning to separate intuition from insecurity. You're entangling the truth of who you are from the stories you've been told about who you should be. Isn't that liberating? Picture yourself sitting alone, maybe with a coffee in hand. No phone, no distractions, just you and your thoughts. At first, it's uncomfortable. Your mind races. You feel the urge to check your notifications or call someone to fill the silence. But then, something shifts. In that stillness, you start to carry your own weight. You realize you don't need to chase validation or bend over backward to please everyone. You stop saying yes, just to avoid letting someone down. You stop wasting energy on conversations that leave you drained. You learn that no isn't cruel, it's honest. And honesty? It's the foundation of a life that feels like yours. That clarity doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't need to. It shows up in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you don't chase what used to tear you apart. Others notice it too. They feel it in the calm confidence you carry, like a quiet storm that doesn't need to prove itself. Seneca, the ancient philosopher, once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Solitude helps you see that. It pulls you out of the spiral of what ifs and worst case scenarios. It grounds you in what's real, planting you in soil where something unshakable grows, a sense of self that doesn't bend with every trend, a direction that stays steady even when the world misunderstands you. When you return from that quiet space, you're different, not distant, but deliberate, not bitter, but boundaried. You don't speak just to be heard. Your words carry weight because they come from a place of stillness, not noise. You're not easily swayed, not easily shaken, because you've built your own foundation, one silent moment at a time. Ask yourself, when was the last time you felt that kind of strength? The kind that doesn't need to shout to be felt? That's what solitude does. It's not where life ends, it's where it begins to deepen. But here's where it gets real. There's a turning point in every life when the old version of you, the one who craved approval, who twisted yourself to fit into spaces too small, who rehearsed every word to be liked, starts to crumble. It's not a loud collapse. It's a slow erosion, like a cliff worn down by the tide. You try to hold on to that old self out of habit, maybe even fear. It feels safe, familiar, but it's heavy, it's outdated, and eventually, it starts to feel wrong. That's not failure, it's evolution. When something dies inside you, it's not always a loss. Sometimes, it's the first breath of something truer, something deeper. At first, it's disorienting. You don't feel like yourself anymore. But you can't go back either. The mask you wore? It doesn't fit. The old patterns? They're exhausting. You start saying less, But what you say matters more. You stop explaining yourself, not because you don't care, but because you don't need everyone's approval anymore. You move with intention, like a mountain standing tall, still, watchful, unmoved. And here's what's wild. People notice. Some pull away. Others ask, "What's changed? You seem colder." But what they're really sensing is your freedom. You've stepped out of the game of constant reassurance, of being overly likable. You're no longer addicted to being loved by everyone, and that shift? It's powerful. So, what's the takeaway? Solitude isn't just time alone. It's the training ground for self-trust, self-respect, and self-direction. It's where you build a version of yourself that the world can't easily shake. You don't belong to the noise anymore, you belong to yourself. And that, my friend, is where the real magic happens. So, tell me in the comments, when was the last time you embraced solitude? What did it teach you? Hit that like button if this resonated, and subscribe for more content that helps you live life on your terms. The evolution of you. Letting go to become unshakable. Last time, we talked about how solitude carves out a space for you to trust yourself. To build a foundation so strong the world can't shake it. But what happens when you step back into the world as this new, grounded version of yourself? You become unpredictable, and that can rattle people. Let's dive into what it means to outgrow your old self, to release what no longer fits, and to stand tall in the truth of who you're becoming. When you let go of the version of you that bent to fit others' expectations, something shifts. People who once knew you like the back of their hand, they can't predict you anymore. You're no longer the person who said yes to keep the peace, who dimmed your light to make others comfortable. And that unpredictability? It can feel threatening to those still holding onto the old you, the one who conformed, who played small to fit in. But here's the truth they don't see. That version of you had to go. It wasn't betrayal, it was freedom. You didn't destroy your old self out of spite. You outgrew it, like a snake shedding skin that's too tight. As Carl Jung once said, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. You stopped judging your need for space, your hunger for a quieter strength. You embraced it, and in that acceptance, you set yourself free, not as punishment, but as a rite of passage. Imagine standing at a crossroads, the weight of your old self falling away like autumn leaves. You don't need to explain this transformation to anyone. The people who get it, they won't ask. They'll see the clarity in your eyes, the calm in your steps. And those who don't, they were never meant to walk with this version of you. You start to notice who respects your silence and who only loved you for your noise. Who valued your essence, not just your availability. It's a painful clarity, but it's necessary. It's like clearing out a cluttered room. Suddenly, there's space for what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's what losing your old self is, not a loss, but a path forward. A path where you don't chase connection, you attract it by being grounded. You stop seeking mirrors in others' approval. You've found your own reflection. And it's enough. There's something sacred about that. You don't need to shout about your change or post it for likes. You just live it. People feel it, in your energy, your choices, your refusal to get tangled in petty dramas. They sense a calmness that can't be faked, earned through nights of doubt, moments when you wanted to explain but chose to evolve instead. You're no longer triggered by the same old things. The conversations that used to pull you in, they've lost their grip. At first, that feels like loneliness, but then, it's freedom. You realize you were never truly connected to those people or roles. You were tied to who you had to be to stay there. And now, that person is gone. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This is a rebirth, quiet but real. You become someone who moves with purpose, who doesn't need to explain their values because they live them. Your absence speaks as loudly as your presence once did, not out of pride, but peace. The old self? It was necessary. It carried you through hard lessons, absorbed the wounds, fought for belonging. But its time is done. You don't owe it anything except gratitude and a gentle release. Now, you stand clearer, stronger, unapologetically you, not looking back for validation, not reaching forward in desperation, but grounded in the now, whole. And that's what makes you impossible to pin down. You've stopped being what the world demanded. You've become who you were always meant to be. So, what's next for this unshakable you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe for more on this journey to your truest self. The quiet power of being you. Why stillness speaks louder than words. We've been diving deep into the journey of shedding your old self. Stepping into a freedom that comes from living authentically. But what happens when you embody that truth so fully that you don't need to shout to be seen? You become a quiet force. A presence that commands attention without demanding it. Let's explore the magnetic power of stillness. The strength that comes from no longer chasing validation. And why it changes everything. Picture someone walking into a room. They don't announce themselves. Don't try to steer the conversation. Don't posture for attention. Yet, somehow, all eyes turn to them. Why? Because their energy carries a weight that's impossible to ignore. It's not arrogance or performance, it's the confidence of someone who no longer needs permission to exist. In a world obsessed with likes, followers, and appearances, that kind of restraint is rare. And because it's rare, it's magnetic. It's like a calm lake. Still on the surface but impossibly deep beneath. That's the power of someone who's done the work. Who's faced their fears and insecurities in the quiet and come out stronger. Carl Jung once said, "A man who has not passed through the inferno of his passions has never overcome them." When you've walked through that fire, sat with your doubts, your pain, your need to be liked, you come out changed. You don't react to every opinion thrown your way. You don't jump to defend every choice. You let go of the urge to explain yourself to those who are determined to misunderstand you. Not because you don't care, but because you're aligned. You know now that if someone can't see your value, no amount of words will change their mind. And if they do see it, you don't need to convince them. So, you save your energy. You speak only when it matters. And when you do, people listen, not because you're louder, but because your words are deliberate, rooted in something real. That's the beauty of this detachment. It's not cold or distant, it's self-contained. You're not pushing people away, you're just not clinging to their approval anymore. You've freed yourself from the tug of needing to be liked. And in doing so, you've freed others from carrying the weight of your identity. It's liberating, isn't it? To move through the world light, yet heavy with purpose? Others feel it too. Your self-possession unsettles those still measuring themselves by the crowd's applause. They see you, unshaken by judgment or flattery. And it forces them to question their own need for validation. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly. Waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. That's your power now. You don't try to impress, you live your values. And that makes you unforgettable. People might mistake this detachment for disinterest. But it's the highest form of clarity. You can engage without being consumed. Be present without performing. Care without clinging. You're like a mountain. Steady and unmoved, yet alive with quiet strength. Others don't just respect that, they adjust to it. They sense you can't be baited into overreacting. Can't be swayed by criticism or praise. You're not chasing the spotlight because you carry your own light. And that's what sets you apart from the attention hungry. So, what's it like to carry that kind of quiet power? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this resonates. And subscribe for more on becoming your truest, most unshakable self. Let's keep this journey going. The unshakable you. Building power from within. We've been talking about the quiet power that comes from standing firm in your truth. Radiating a presence that doesn't need to shout to be felt. But what happens when you stop chasing the world's approval altogether? You become your own source of strength, rooted in a clarity that no one can take away. Let's dive into the freedom of no longer needing validation and how it transforms you into someone truly unshakable. Imagine someone who moves through life with a steady, quiet confidence. They don't chase recognition or beg for attention, they just are. In a world that rewards the loud, the brash, the attention-grabbing, their stillness feels almost mysterious. People notice, don't they? They can't help it. When someone stops proving themselves, they've already proven something far greater, self-mastery. As Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be. And then do what you have to do. That's the secret. You decide who you are. Then live it, not for applause, but for alignment. Every step you take is intentional. Every word deliberate. The less you say, the more others feel your depth. Your presence leaves an imprint, not because it's loud, but because it's grounded. like an ancient tree with roots too deep to shake. There's a strange freedom in letting go of the need to be seen. It's not about becoming cold or numb, it's about outgrowing the illusion that your strength depends on others' approval. The world's silence doesn't rattle you anymore. Its praise doesn't pull you in. You move from a center that doesn't need permission, like a lighthouse standing firm no matter the storm. For so long, we're taught that safety comes from being loved, understood, or validated. But what if real power lies in letting go of that need? Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." That's where it begins. You embrace your fears, your darkness, your unmet needs. You accept that maybe not everyone will get you. Maybe no one will love you exactly as you've dreamed. And instead of fighting it, you exhale. You stop trying to control how others see you. In that surrender, a new kind of control emerges, not over people, but over yourself. You stop explaining what doesn't need explaining. You stop trading pieces of your soul for fleeting comfort. You no longer shrink to be palatable or soften your voice to avoid tension. You stand, unedited, letting the chips fall where they may. Some people drift away, others draw closer. But none of it shakes you. Because you're the one defining your worth now. You've stopped outsourcing it to the world. You've stopped chasing love as proof you exist. And that makes you unshakable, not fragile, but rooted. It doesn't mean you stop feeling or close yourself off. It means you stop expecting others to fix what only your own clarity can heal. You become your own source, built brick by brick in the quiet choices you make when no one's watching. That's the paradox of true power. It's born in silence, not noise. It's not about how much you say or how loudly you say it. It's about how little you need to. You don't need the crowd to feel whole. You don't need applause to know you're enough. So, what does it feel like to stand in that kind of strength? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this hit home. And subscribe for more on this journey to your truest, most powerful self. Let's keep building that unshakable you. The final shift. Becoming your own foundation. We've been exploring how true power comes from within. From a stillness that doesn't need the world's applause to stand tall. But what happens when you fully embrace that strength and stop looking to others to complete you? You become the architect of your own peace, unshakable and whole. Let's dive into how this final shift, owning your inner foundation, changes everything. You've stopped making your healing a group project. Your peace? It's built in solitude, not by inviting others to validate every step. You don't need to see your reflection in someone else's eyes anymore. That mirror is now inside you, clear and undistorted. Picture it. A quiet lake within, reflecting your truth without ripples of doubt. You no longer fear disconnection because the deepest connection, the one with yourself, is rock solid. People can come and go. You can love and be loved. But your foundation doesn't waver. It's not cold or distant, it's self-contained. You're not detaching from life. You're engaging with it on your terms. Isn't that what true freedom feels like? Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you stop caring who notices, who claps, or who stays, you redirect that energy inward. You start asking new questions. Not, why did they hurt me? But, what can I build with what's left?" Your pain becomes discipline. Your silence a strategy. Your disappointments a blueprint for growth. You're no longer stuck, waiting for validation to move forward. You've become the current, flowing with purpose. This strength isn't handed to you by luck or the right people. It's forged when you meet yourself exactly where you are. From that meeting place, a truer self rises, unedited by others' expectations, unshaken by fear of being misunderstood. You become someone who moves with clarity, not desperation. You hold space for your emotions without spilling them into every conversation. You don't crumble when the applause fades because your rhythm was never built on their noise. You know where you're going. And that's enough. People feel your gravity, not because you demand it, but because you don't need it. It's rare, isn't it, to meet someone so grounded they don't need the crowd's approval? That shift isn't a loss, it's a reclaiming. You've taken back the ability to guide yourself, to walk through disappointment without folding, to be unseen without vanishing, to be misunderstood without abandoning yourself. Everything changes here. Life starts to move in your favor, not because the world suddenly gets you, but because you've stopped needing it to. You're unshakable, not because you were born that way, but because you chose it, over and over, until your mind believed you were enough. You don't need to be seen to be powerful, understood to be whole. The moment you stop waiting for the world to care, you start shaping a self it can't ignore, quietly, fully, unapologetically. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. If this resonated, there's another video on your screen right now to take you even deeper. Watch it next. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe to keep building that unshakable you. Let's keep becoming